Hi everyone, it's John here from UniTasterDays, and my job is to introduce the event and introduce our speakers. Today, what we're going to do is look at actually introducing you as students to potentially moving somewhere a little bit smaller for your studies. And we previously had an event where we looked at studying in London and perhaps moving to the capital of England to study. What I want to do today is actually look from a different perspective. And if you are studying in somewhere very big, and perhaps you're actually exploring studying in the future, maybe in a smaller location. And the two students that are joining us today did just that. I'm joined today by Abraham and Kirsty, joining us from Bangor University. Abraham is a Masters by Research student studying health economics, and Kirsty is studying media and Welsh theatre. Now, Kirsty is originally from Swansea and moved to Bangor from Swansea for her studies, and Abraham did an undergraduate course at Bangor as well, and he's originally from London and moved to Bangor from London. So they're going to provide a perspective of doing just that, perhaps moving somewhere a little bit smaller, and rather than moving to a big city, moving away from somewhere a lot bigger as well. With these events, I'm always conscious you've tuned in to hear from my excellent speakers, not for myself. So with that, I'll pass things to our first speaker. That's Abraham, joining us from Bangor University. Over to you, Abraham.
Hi there. My name is Abraham, and as John said, I'm originally from London. I'm going to speak to you a little bit about my experience moving from London to where I go to university. So I chose my university initially because I wanted somewhere where I could focus and develop myself and get away a little bit from the noise. So it was really important for me when I was looking for my course to make sure that I'll be able to develop over the time of my degree and really get some good skills and try and get some exposure to something new. Leaving a large city, I thought that maybe it would lack where I was going to would lack certain things as far as maybe culture or experiences or entertainment, but that wasn't the case. It was very encouraging to see that it was quite diverse, not only in things that you could do, but the people that you meet and the opportunities that you have available to you. And ultimately, I was able to make a lot of friends, and I have a massive network around not just the UK, but the world as well, because of obviously there are a lot of international students that come to university in the UK. So that again just allowed me to really build my knowledge, and I wouldn't have necessarily been exposed to certain things in being from London and being in London for university. As I said, I also chose my university because I did a lot of research into my course, and I saw that my university offered a year abroad, and that was something that I was very, very much interested in, which I'll speak on a little bit more later on. But I chose my university also because I wanted to be valued more as an individual. I wanted to be seen not just a number within the masses. And so having these intimate class sizes and having your lecturers know you on a personal level really, really enhances your degree. And just ultimately, as I said, your development as a person as you go through the time being in university is really, really an important thing. And I can't stress it enough, having that place where you can develop. So for me, I spoke to my lecturers very frequently, multiple times within the week outside of lecture times. And, you know, over the course of the years, I found out more about them, they found out more about me, and then often they would earmark and put to the side different opportunities that they think might be interesting for me to apply to, or might be pertinent for what I'm trying to do, or things like that. So these are things that in larger places may not always happen, just by virtue of the fact that there are so many people studying in one specific place. What happened as well, which I found, I was never bored. There was a wide range of societies and clubs for me to join and participate in, and being an active member of all these different societies and clubs just meant, again, that I could build my network of friends, and I wasn't just limited to the people that study my course. I joined societies and clubs within the university, but I also joined local clubs and societies as well. So it meant that I got to meet the people that actually live in the area, so that I wasn't just siloed or isolated in the bubble of being a university student. I got to see and meet real people that live in where I go to university. So that was honestly great, because as I said, it just builds up who your friends are and all your friendship circles and things like that. And it just allows you to feel more at home, because you don't want to go to somewhere and then feel homesick or isolated or feel like you don't belong there. That would really, I can't imagine having that kind of experience being a university student. So I'm really fortunate that wasn't the case for me. But it's also down to the fact that I was so proactive as well. I played basketball. That was my primary club and society, or club/society, that I was involved in. In my first year, I came on, played a bag of games, got to be someone known around Athletic Union. And then in my second year, I became captain of the men's first team. So again, that meant my profile around the university was just elevating and elevating. The quality of basketball was great. Again, coming from London, I thought that it would be a step below, but that is not the case at all. There are some real skilled players scattered around, the UK, and coming to university and competing in Bucks really allowed me to see that. So it was a pleasant surprise. I thought that I was just going to come and just, dominate. Whereas I came and I still performed very well and above most people, but I was challenged. And ultimately, you don't want things as an athlete to be easy. You want to have to kind of battle for it as well. So that was a nice surprise. And as I mentioned earlier, I had a year abroad in France as a part of my undergraduate degree. And in France, I was able to coach and play basketball, but also deliver community cultural events, giving them a flavor of what it's like to be in the UK, doing different cultural workshops, talking about language, talking about specific cultural things in different regions of the UK, and then obviously talking a little bit about food. And again, this was something that my university actively encouraged students to do, to go abroad, so that again, you can build this network, you can go forward and just open your horizons and broaden them to a greater degree, because ultimately you want to have choices. And speaking of choices, being in this university, you have the city life, but then not far, literally a stone's throw away, you have a lot of natural beauty as well. So we're close to actual sand beaches. It's not just pebbles. You have local mountains and national parks. And it's nice. It helps you take stock and reflect. And it's not just, 24/7 buses and cars driving around all the time. It's nice to be able to take that step back. So again, just having the options of going to the city, but then at the same time taking a step back and going into kind of the environment and nature, which is something I didn't really appreciate before coming to my university. And it's something I'm very, very grateful for now, because ultimately you're supposed to turn your degree into a job and, more importantly, a career. So having all these options and just having your mind open really, really helps that. But again, speaking on boredom, I was never bored whilst I was here. And something that I'm really big on is food. I'm someone that loves my food. So there are a lot of different restaurants and places to eat local cuisine, but then also it wasn't difficult for me to find the foods that my mum makes back home. So there were local shops that would be able to source it for you if they didn't always have it. And then also, as I mentioned earlier, I joined a lot of local clubs and societies, and I got engrossed in the local community. I was able to meet people who were able to also cook the foods that my mum would make. Obviously not as good as my mum, but it was as good as, and it was nice. So if I didn't want to cook, or I couldn't find what I was looking for in the rare occasions, then somebody else in the local community or within the university would have been able to help me out. And then, as I said, there are still all the local restaurants and stuff. So it was, for food and things like that, you're not lacking at all. And even in terms of entertainment, so you've got obviously cinemas, there's local designer outlets and malls which aren't too far away, but at the same time, they're not right in your face. So again, you can take that step back and just relax and just enjoy where you are. So again, having this choice is something that really, really benefited me coming from London. And transport wasn't something that I had to worry about at all as well. Everything was and is on my doorstep. Local public transport is relatively inexpensive, so you can get to where you're going, and it's not difficult to navigate as well at all. So there's that. And then ultimately, if you drive as well, driving outside of the city becomes just that much more of a useful tool, because, you know, you don't have to worry about, for example, congestion charge or expensive rates of parking when you go out. What happened for me when I first came to my university? Initially, I thought, oh, leaving London, I'm gonna potentially miss out on certain things, and that wasn't the case. I was able to find stuff that was new, and as I said, I was able to develop some new skills, because, you know, the exposure of the level of exposure to certain opportunities and things, it varied in comparison to being in London. It was different, and ultimately that level of exposure to all these different experiences and people and opportunities was really beneficial. As I said, I didn't miss out on much. Obviously, of course, there are things that London has to offer that smaller cities and towns might not have to offer, but ultimately you shouldn't compare the two places, because they're very unique. What London does really well, it does really well, whereas what smaller cities do really well, they do really well as well. As I said earlier, you can't find, you know, so much natural beauty in the environment and even sand beaches in London. It's just, you're not going to find it. So to try and compare it would do both places an injustice. So you have to really be present. And as I said, doing all these different things and sign up to all these different clubs and societies, it just makes it your experience that much more rich. And ultimately you find that you won't actually miss London whilst you're here. But then when you go home, it's nice to be back, because then you get back to, any large city for that matter, you get back to what you're used to and where some of your friends are from home and school, of course. So what I'd like to say in closing is that I've enjoyed my time thoroughly at my university for all the reasons that I mentioned. And it's nice to have somewhere else in the world where I feel I can consider home in a way, despite the fact it's not actually my real home, but I feel absolutely normal and natural when I'm here. As I said, I'm not bored. I don't feel out of place. I've been really, really welcomed. And it's really been an incomparable experience to what maybe going to university in London for me would have been like, and hopefully for other people within larger cities or coming from larger cities as well. So I want to say thank you for taking the time to listen to me and speaking about my experience at university, and good luck in your search.
Abraham, thank you very much. Really great presentation, looking at the experience of moving from the UK, well, the capital of England in London, to another city, obviously at Bangor, it's a lot smaller, and your experience of the two for any students that are looking at doing exactly the same thing, or perhaps moving from a smaller city than London over to a place like Bangor as well. So really, really appreciate that. And a good shout out as well for your mum's cooking, Abraham, which is always good as well. Our next speaker is Kirsty. Kirsty is joining us. She's another student at Bangor University, and she's in her first year of a Welsh Theatre and Media course. Now, Kirsty didn't join Bangor from London. Kirsty actually joined Bangor from Swansea, which is, as I'm sure most people would be aware, is one of the biggest cities in Wales. So a very different perspective to Abraham's, but the same concept of moving somewhere a little bit smaller from somewhere a lot bigger. And with that, Kirsty, I'll pass things to you, please.
So yeah, as John said, I'm Kirsty. I come from Swansea, so it's about 4-5 hours away from where I am now in Bangor. Yeah, I remember when I was in sixth form and I was thinking about going to university, I think naturally I thought to myself, okay, I want to go somewhere bigger, I want to explore. In my head, that was the full experience of university. You had to go somewhere bigger. So then I knew I wanted to stay in Wales, and then automatically I thought, okay, Cardiff is the only place that's bigger than Swansea. So I went to Cardiff, I went to go and see the place, but I just realised that the course didn't suit me at all. I love Cardiff, don't get me wrong, but the course didn't suit me. So then I was doing more research into courses in Wales and where I could go. And then I came across Bangor, and the course was perfect for me in Bangor. So I thought to myself, okay, I'll consider Bangor. And the first thing that came to my mind was, okay, that's a lot further than Cardiff. But again, it didn't bother me. It never crossed my mind that it was smaller than Swansea, and I never really worried about that. And then I came on an open day to Bangor and I loved it. And again, it didn't cross my mind that it was smaller, and I was excited and I was ready to go. And then, yeah, so I came to Bangor, and honestly, it was the best decision I ever made, as in I'm having the time of my life, honestly. And this may sound strange, but even though it's a lot smaller, it doesn't feel smaller in a way, because you're still with the same amount of people you would be with if you were in Cardiff Uni, for example. If anything, I think I'm with more people here in Bangor, the flats are bigger or something, you know. But as in, honestly, it's not something to worry about going to somewhere smaller. One thing I notice is I have a lot more time on my hands. I have a lot more time to relax, and just because it's a lot smaller, there's less to do, which sounds bad, but yeah, it's just nice to just sit down, relax. Yeah, that's the first thing that came to my mind when I thought about moving to a smaller place. Obviously, don't get me wrong, I miss the takeaways or the certain shops that you have in Swansea that you don't have here. But you get used to it, and you don't need them, do you, seriously? So honestly, if anything, it's a blessing in disguise, because you save a lot. I've saved a lot of money. But yeah, I mentioned there's not much to do. You still get, don't get me wrong, you still get loads of opportunities, but they're different kinds of opportunities. Going for a walk, for example. I live on an estate back in Swansea, so if I was to go for a walk, I'd just see loads of houses. Whereas if I go for a walk here, you can pass the pier. It's totally different, and it's a nice change as well. But don't get me wrong, going back home is nice. I enjoy home, but yet being somewhere completely different to home is really nice. Yeah, the most obvious thing I reckon as well is it's a lot quieter here. The roads are a lot quieter. Obviously, I'm lucky enough to have a car, and I drive up and down from Swansea. And I'll let you into a little secret. I learned to drive in Swansea, and I really could not drive. I was absolutely hopeless at driving. Okay. And then obviously I drove up to Bangor, and I remember the first couple of weeks I was driving, and I thought, oh my gosh, I can actually drive, as in, I'm not stalling all the time. I felt a lot more relaxed in the car when I was driving. I thought, oh my gosh, like I've improved. And then Christmas came, and I went back home for Christmas, and then I remember driving in Swans again, and I thought, oh my gosh, no, I really can't. I haven't changed at all. It's a lot quieter. So yeah, if you want more confidence in your driving, go to a smaller place. And yeah, as in a smaller place comes a smaller university, I suppose, and I have a lot more attention in the lectures, which suits me personally really well, because I do like the attention in the lectures. But yeah, it can be challenging, don't get me wrong. Living somewhere totally different, it can be really challenging, and you do have to adapt as well. But yeah, I really think it's worth it, because I think it is important to go to a university where you experience new things. One thing I've noticed as well is everyone knows everyone, and that can sound quite daunting, but honestly it's a good thing, as in on a night out you just turn your head and you've seen someone that you saw the other day. And it's because I was worried about that, because I remember when going out in Swansea, you only see your friend group. They're the only people you know on a night out. And then I got to know all my flatmates before moving in September, and they're local, and everyone knows everyone. And I thought, how on earth am I going to get along with these people? They all know each other, and I come from a totally different background, and we come from totally different worlds. But honestly, that's nothing to worry about. You get along. You're forced to get along, I suppose. And honestly, that's not something you need to worry about at all. And yeah, a little reminder as well. It might be smaller, but there's not going to be a university here if they don't have everything you need. You still. I did mention I have a car, but you still have transport. You still have a library. There might be less takeaways, but you still have takeaways. You still have pubs. So honestly, that is not something they need to worry about. And I think whatever decision you come to, yeah, you don't need to worry about it at all. Just, if I was you, I'd concentrate. I'd find the course that you like, and I'd worry more about that than the place. And the place is just it just comes along with the course, I suppose. But good luck with your decision. I'm sure you'll all be fine, and it's nothing to worry about.